All right, everybody, welcome. It is Wednesday. Herbert is on vacation, much needed rest, but we've got a master panel together today. We're going to be talking, of course, a bit about the new and improved, slightly cheaper Model Y, the financials of it, the engineering of it. That's why we brought on Matt Smith from Rebellionaire, who covers all kinds of financial and whiz bang things from that end of it. And we've got Joe Tegmeyer, the drone pilot who's been covering Texas for these many years now. He's a retired Air Force pilot, so he knows how to how to fly something much smaller this time. His drone. He covers a Starbase as well. He covers the SpaceX facility out there in Bastrop, as well as the Boring Company out there, and even the lithium refinery in Corpus Christi. Welcome to everybody. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Good to be on here. It should be an interesting panel. Looking forward to seeing the vibes. I think a lot of us have met each other, or I think in the case of Nick and Joe, haven't even met each other. So it should be an interesting panel for everyone.
Well, it's very exciting. Of course, what we're going to be talking about primarily is this. Joe had a chance last week to get an invite to go out and check it out before it was officially revealed. Of course, he had to sign the NDA, which meant we couldn't actually know what he knew until yesterday, which is, of course, very exciting. I would say, let's just start with Joe. What is your overall impression of the vehicle?
All right. Well, again, thanks for having me on. It's a great opportunity to talk about just like there's so much news that's going on. But with yesterday, the Model Y standard kind of unveiling, but also the surprise that they also had the Model 3 at the same time. So it was kind of a twofer. And, I did get a chance to drive it. I got a chance to see it, to talk to people that are actually building it. So that is really a great opportunity. I guess my thought on it was probably what most people have been talking about for a long time is, we've heard it was going to be a new car. And this is clearly just another variant of the Model Y. So, that was kind of interesting when I did see that. The other thing that I noticed off the bat when you compare the two, the Model Y and the Model 3 standard, is that the Model Y is significantly more changed than the Model 3 is. The Model 3, it's mostly the running line and interior versus the Model Y, where there's a lot more. There's a lot of exterior and interior and running line. So I did not actually ask this question, but it kind of came to mind after I had seen it and I'd been out there. It almost struck me that the Model Y was in more development for longer than the Model 3. And then there was a decision later on to do it with the Model 3 as well, kind of using the same kind of materials and the approach that they used with the Model Y. As far as the way it looks, it looked really good to me, and it almost kind of, I know this may sound funny, but the way the front bumper is with that black, larger kind of grille and that spoiler, it actually ties in better to the rear bumper than the regular Model Y, in my opinion. So I think it actually looked more integrated together. The interior is a bit more Spartan, I guess, with that textile, but it was very comfortable. It has a little bit different roof material. It's got that liner. It has not the glazed glass. So when I was driving it, I was kind of curious, does it sound different? Is it louder or whatever? And to me, it just sounded just like when I'm driving around in the robotaxi. So it was pretty much just like a Model Y. So from that standpoint, it was pretty nice. And I'm probably rambling on here, but I don't know if you have any questions. But the other, I guess, the last thing is who is going to buy this car? What is their target audience? And I think the people that are looking for it is they want to have some of the technology, and this one actually has most of the technology. I think they're curious about EVs. They want to get a start on it. They don't really care too much about things like rear screens or whether the mirrors fold in manually or not. I think, a lot of these people, especially if they're a different group of people coming in, are kind of used to cars that maybe that's normal. And so I just thought that, people looking for getting into it, not spending a whole lot, maybe that, first impression of it. And I think that it seems like it's really well positioned for that market.
Well, let's talk about the financials. Let's have Nick and Matt sign in on this. You know, what do you think of the price? Is 40K too much for what you're getting?
Yeah, so I'll jump in first. You know, I think I'm looking at this maybe in a US centric kind of way, but I sort of can't help it. But we had the tax credit expiring, obviously, and so the entry price for the base Model Y, you know, before that was effectively lower than where they are now. So you know, I'm sort of two minds of this. Like one, I don't think we're going to see a big increase in demand relative to where we were, let's say, before Q3, because you have a higher effective price for a lower trim product effectively. So, you know, I don't think it's necessarily going to be some big boon where we're going to see massive volumes coming out of this. Now, at the same time, I think being able to offer something that is a bit cheaper to be able to sustain demand in this new pricing regime where the tax credit is gone is certainly a good thing, because I'd much rather have this sort of entry price for the 3 and the Y in this new reality where we are without the tax credit now, than just kind of hope that people who previously were getting a nice vehicle for 35 to high 30s kind of walk away price. They now have an option that is maybe slightly more expensive for slightly less features, but at least is a good option. So I'm not like super excited about it, but I still think it was a good and prudent thing for Tesla to do to introduce this lower price point.
Yeah, so I can't just start off by talking about price. I think I need to zoom out. I feel like you see the reaction right now in the community. So everyone can sit there and try to defend Tesla nonstop and who knows better than Elon and Tesla, and we can say all that all day. And I'll be the first one to say that saying that Elon made a mistake or betting against Elon is probably always a fool's errand. However, he is human, and we have seen him screw up multiple times. So let's just be honest, he's still human. And in my opinion, this was either a big mistake or this was a pivot that happened last second. If it took them all this time to come up with that, then we should be scared for Tesla as a company. They're supposed to be the company of speed, the company of, if you don't think you're serving value in this meeting, get out of the meeting, the company of every department talks to each other, and this is the best that they come out with. I don't buy that. I don't believe that. That's not what I've seen from this company. I'm of the opinion that, just like we read in Walter Isaacson's book, Elon said, okay, fine, Franz, we can do this mix vehicle. That will be the Cybercab and this next one. And then I think over the course of the last year, they nixed it. And that at some point they had to give us something, because they've been talking about nonstop on quarterly calls. They've been talking about nonstop on all of the share decks or decks out there. And obviously the people needed something. EV tax credits going out. And they're at the same point where they're kind of in a catch-22 where we're on the verge of robotaxis. We see what's happening. We're right there. We really want to spin up a whole new line and take focus on, like, I think that they're probably in kind of a tight spot in a pickle, and I can empathize with that. But to sit here and act like this is what we've all been expecting, that this is what we've all envisioned, I think we're just lying to ourselves if we say that. As far as the price point, it is more affordable than what's currently there post EV tax credit expiring. However, I will say right now, if this is, and I've been saying this loudly on X, if a $70 difference per month is the difference between you choosing this one versus a much better vehicle in the next step up, you should not be buying a Tesla. You should not be buying a new car. Go save your money. Save up 5-10 grand, buy a new car. Go buy a used Tesla. Go buy a 2025 Tesla Model Y. It's going to be better than what this is. Like, that's just objective. But if $70 per month is what's making or breaking for you to make a decision, you are probably don't have your financial house in order. And again, I know I sound like an asshole. I'm sorry for cussing, but that's just objective truth. Like, there's no debating that. If you are so strapped that $70 month to month makes a difference, you have no business buying a new car. So that's kind of my take. So I think we are somewhat deceived, and we're not getting the full story here, which I don't think they have to tell us the whole story at the end of the day. I honestly prefer when they don't tell us everything. But something doesn't feel right. Something doesn't smell right. It doesn't pass the gut check here. And if this is what they've been working on for this whole time, and this is it, then we're in trouble as a company, because we're not innovating, and nobody should be talking and laughing at Apple, because then Tesla's at the very same point. because then Tesla is kind of a two-trick pony: energy and FSD, because everything else has gone stale. It would be what I would say. So I don't know. Those are the realities that I'm dealing with, and I'm happy to change my mind, but this is just where I'm at. Like, I'm trying to make sense of it all, and that's where I land.
Well, I appreciate it. I would say, so the price point that it's at is what I expected. And what I'm looking at is when the Model Y was announced in 2018, let's pretend for a second that inflation hadn't happened. So let's use the inflation calculator and look at it. $31,000 in 2018 dollars is what it costs. If this was available in 2018 for 31,000, I think everybody would have been over the moon. But inflation adjusted, people are not seeing it quite that way. When you went there, Joe, did they share the price, and was it the same as the price they unveiled it at?
Well, to be interestingly on that subject, the time that I was reviewing the vehicle and I was doing all my shots and getting all the camera, the images and stuff, I actually asked him about that. I said, what is the price going to be? And I guess I should first say that we had the group of influencers that were brought in, and they did a bunch of stuff on their side. And I was a little bit different. I was a guest of Giga Texas, and I went and I did stuff like the factory people would do. So I got a little bit of a different view on that. So at the time that I was asking that question, the idea of the cost was still not completely resolved. In fact, they were kind of going back and forth a little bit at that time. And if you'll notice on my video, I'm talking about, I hope that they can bring it in low enough and we'll see what the market's going to say. That's because at the time I filmed, it was still a little bit of a question. So that kind of gives me an idea that they were kind of still not set on that up until almost the last minute. So I found that quite interesting as a data point when I was talking with them. As far as, I don't know if this answers some of the questions that Nick was having. And I think you have some pretty value added questions there, and they are legitimate. As this process started about 2 years ago, what they were going to do with this type of vehicle and whatever low cost vehicles are going to be. And along those 2 years, a lot has changed. There were some decisions that were made product wise that kind of altered the direction of where Tesla's going to go. Some of it had to do with a pretty firm shift to let's embrace the AI part of the company rather than the selling of car kind of part of the company. So that's affected things. And the time it took to get all of the supply and logistics base going, there was also some other big changes that happened. We had an election. We had a bunch of tariffs that have affected some of the supply chains. We've had the EV tax credit being modified and terminating a lot earlier than they thought. And there was a few other issues that came along the way. And I think it did change the trajectory of where they were going. I think, if you look at where they have decided to put a lot of huge capital investors at, say, Giga Texas, all of it is towards the future, AI stuff. It's data center, it's power, it's cybercab, it's Optimus production lines. Those kinds of things is where most of the effort is. So when they were approaching, what are they going to do with a lower cost vehicle with that in mind, part of their the desire was to not expend much on the existing Model Y line and try to use that to the maximum extent possible and concentrate on those future items that are more in that AI realm, or at least in the direction with autonomy and AI that Tesla is going to go towards. So hopefully that gives a little bit of context of what was going on behind the scenes.
Indeed. Let's talk about some of the features that were cut. We'll decide if these are the appropriate ones. The panoramic glass roof is still kind of there. Joe, will you tell us what we're actually looking at when we see that panoramic roof?
Yeah, so it's interesting. In my video, I showed the body in white so you could see what it looks like. So there is no structure over the roof. It's meant for a glass panel. And there was discussion about whether they want to do a glass panel or a metal panel or some other panel. There are expenditures involved with making it a metal panel. So you would have to get stamping presses to be able to build that large piece. You'd have to have all the bracing. You'd have to have it affixed to the vehicle. and it does change the structure of the car. So you would have to do a different crash testing qualification process. So that is a consideration that they had. It also would have introduced more of those changes into the production lines that I told you that they were trying to not do. So the decision was to try to keep it as a glass kind of structure, and most of that decision was aesthetic. They wanted to keep the Model Y line looking pretty much the same, whether it was the standard or the performance or anything else. So they all would have the same kind of roof. The material that is actually used is different, though. It's a different laminate. It doesn't have the UV type coatings that you would see on the glass roof on the premium or performance. It's more of a kind of an opaque kind of material. It looks like it is glass. It has that look on the outside, but it's not transparent. So that's why they have a liner, a full liner on the inside. So when you look up at the ceiling, there's no glass. It just looks like a regular panel. And that also helps with, heating and that kind of thing, because in addition to the glass roof, they also reduced the laminate glass on the doors. So there's some sound and there's also some heating. And with that solid roof and the material that they made it out of, it kind of addresses that issue as well. So I have heard some people talk about, well, if I get one, I'll just cut the liner out and I'll have a roof that I can see through. You can't.
Yeah, don't do that.
No.
Reducing the speakers, removing the subwoofer. The Model 3 rear-wheel drive already didn't have a subwoofer. It sounds great, I can assure you. Losing the AM/FM radio, ambient lighting. I don't think a lot of people really care all that much. The closed center console is gone. Power adjust steering wheel. I mean, how often do you adjust your steering wheel? On this list, the only one that I would say is maybe a miss is getting rid of the autopilot. What do you guys think of that? Why don't you go first, Matt?
Yeah, I guess if you're going for the lower priced variant, I think you should get some less features. I mean, I obviously it wouldn't cost Tesla anything to throw in autopilot, so it doesn't matter too much to me. But I think the real story of where Tesla goes from here is on autonomy. And so you want to, like, maybe that's a way you can incentivize people to subscribe for $99 a month or to buy FSD outright. So autopilot is a loss for sure if you're user of the car. But I actually wonder, like, Tesla, I'm sure, has great stats on like how much is that actually being used, and I would suspect that it's not very, very much, because like even people who have FSD, like the casual owners, a lot of times they aren't even using it. My in-laws had a 3-month FSD trial. They were really excited to try it, and I was like, so like, what'd you think? It's like, oh, we never tried it. It's like, how are you not trying this? So I think for a lot of casual Tesla owners, autopilot probably isn't a big loss. But yeah, I do think Tesla would have much more data on that would probably support that decision.
I would say that the real problem with autopilot is it's not very good. If you're used to FSD, and then you go to autopilot, it's a very different experience, and it's a bit disappointing. Nick, what do you think about about autopilot being gone?
I think all of it should be nixed. It should all be deleted except for FSD. That should be it. One option.
It is safety. I am not a big fan of paywalling safety, but they have better stats than we do, and I would agree that they know what's going on. Does anyone have? Yeah.
So I was just gonna say, safety is always paywalled one way or another, and I think you are trying to help push people towards the actual safer option rather than live in this limbo. So I think sometimes you got to push it. What I would rather see them do, to be honest, is charge FSD by the mile. Like I think that's so long overdue. It's such an easy thing to do. To me, it just seems obvious. Like, lower the friction to usage. If somebody wants to use it for 5 minutes, great. Let them use it for that 5 minutes, and it will cost more on a per mile basis. If you want to sign up for a month, guess what? That's more cost effective. If you want to go for a year, that's more cost effective. But why would you throw any more barriers into the usage of it? Like, make it so easy for people to try it. There's already a big barrier to it. You talk about paywall, Brian. You have to buy a $40,000 car just to use it. There's your paywall to begin with. So make it so it's 50 cents a mile if you want to use it. Everyone will try for 50 cents. That's no big deal.
Yeah, what I was going to say, Brian, is the reason why autopilot is not so good is there's a reason for that. And that is that they're trying to put all the resources towards their ultimate goal, which is autonomy. So why would you put resources, put team members, do the whatever you need to do to get just basic autopilot good when you have something that's much better? And it's just a software change. I mean, the car can obviously do full self-driving. It could have the auto steer with a switch of a software. So it's not that. I think it's more towards their direction of autonomy. And it's also just that, why put resources towards an inferior product, which you've already said you don't want? We're going to be moving towards full autonomy. And, I agree with what Nick says. I think it was Nick or Matt, but it is a forcing function too. It drives you towards that full self-driving if that's what you want.
Well, I'm hoping that when 14 is out, maybe they'll do another trial, perhaps, for the people who just don't seem to get it, don't seem to like it. Matt, a question I have for you is about addressable market. How much bigger does it get by introducing this over not introducing it, having a $5,000 cheaper option?
Yeah, so I don't have the stats. I know ARK Invest a couple of years ago shared a stat about, basically if you lower the price of a car by, X dollars, it's not like a corresponding, like a 20% decrease in your price isn't like a 20% increase in your TAM. It's more like a 5X or a 10X increase in your TAM, something like that. So I think those dynamics are at work here. But, as a financial analyst who's modeling this sort of stuff out, I think we have the benefit of seeing where demand was when they had the tax credit earlier. And so we actually we're pretty close to that price range. Now internationally, there may be some benefits, if they get this product in some more countries, but I don't think there's going to be like some significant change in volumes that are coming out of this simply because we had some underutilization of the existing lines to begin with. Despite the fact that we had the tax credit before. So to me, it doesn't change the story a whole lot. I think kind of the trend that I find a little bit more interesting than like what's the TAM at a certain price point is where's awareness right now? Because I think for years awareness about Tesla in the general public has been like quite atrocious. I mean, we're all nerds that like love it and consume everything, and like why would anyone buy a non-Tesla vehicle? I just don't get it. But so much of the general public, either it just has a negative view of Tesla or is ignorant or, has these misconceptions about safety or fire risk or, charging, all these things that we know are kind of bogus. But I think there are some real roadblocks for those. But I'm seeing like in my own neighborhood, a lot more Teslas recently. And I think attitudes just in general seem to be softening toward the company. It was like the fascist mobile 6 months ago. I think we kind of like forget how recently that was, but I think, that has completely gone away. And I think people are slowly starting to realize, at least in my anecdotal experience, just how good these cars are. So that's a trend that I'm a bit more interested in.
Can I ask? Sorry,
yeah, Nick,
can I ask a question?
I was going to kick it to you.
Oh, okay. Well, let me first just kind of give a perspective of what I have, and then I have a question for everyone. But part of my point of view is when I see this, and to Matt, your point, and Joe, you mentioned a second ago, we now have a more expensive vehicle compared to when we had the credit for a, really stripped down, abused version of a Model Y or Model 3 compared to what you could have gotten last week, right? So that's hard to contend with. And it makes me wonder, going back to Matt's point, would you have been better to not waste all that time, all those cycles for a vehicle that's probably gonna be lower margin versus just trying to drive awareness? I mean, do a proper campaign at this point. Like I've always been one of the people who's against advertising, but clearly it needs it now, especially with FSD. I think we're missing the boat here. You shouldn't be trying to sell the car. It's just like American Eagle wasn't trying to sell jeans. They're trying to sell sexiness with Sydney Sweeney, right? You're missing the boat. Sell FSD and you will sell cars. In my opinion, I think that's what would happen to translate. But you could have put more effort towards that than building this. And so this leads to my question: will these new 3s and Ys go the way of the reduced, stripped down version of the Cybertruck? Is that what we're gonna be left with here soon? Is that what's gonna happen? Because I'm not convinced that this increases TAM at all.
Well, I would say that, in my opinion, at least, I don't see this being the same as the stripped down Cybertruck. The stripped down Cybertruck took out things that were critical. Losing power share in the vault turned away a lot of contractors. Getting rid of the air suspension made people who aren't as easy, don't have as easy a time climbing into something that far off the ground, less interested. So I don't know who that vehicle was for, and a 12% discount isn't that substantial. Where this is what, 13 to 18% cheaper. I think it is a bit of an easier sell, though I can certainly see your point.
I guess just to add to that real quick, I can literally buy a 2025 proper Model Y with I'm looking at them right now. There's a ton of them with 1,000 miles on it, 1,500 miles on it, for $35,000. It makes no sense.
I assume those are
one of the reasons why they had a pretty concerted effort to drop the inventory down in the third quarter.
That is a good point as well. And those are limited in number, I imagine. But I would agree with what you said earlier, Nick, that they've just got to do something. They've got to do, they don't have the other models out. Robotaxi is not, available everywhere today. It's still in very limited release. So I think it'll be interesting to see. On this list, what items were cut that you guys think would actually be a deal breaker? I mean, panoramic glass, as a driver, I don't even see it. The electric folding seats, I don't think you need that. The light bar and indirect brake light, very cool. I don't know. The lower speed, a lot of people don't drive quick, and it's still reasonably fast.
Mm-hmm.
What on this list is critically missing?
Well, I think to me, this is more kind of an aesthetic thing, and it has to do with whoever is going to be the ones purchasing the vehicle. But like I said, I got a chance to drive it, and it drove fine. It was comfortable. It was quiet. It did all the things that I would expect of a vehicle. The thing that surprised me was when I opened the frunk and I looked inside, and I wish I had recorded it, because my question was, is this like a pre-production one? Yeah. And they're like, why? I'm like, because it doesn't look like it's sealed. It's looking like it's missing a bunch of the trim panels. And it just looks like it's incomplete. So that kind of surprised me right off the bat. So like I said, it was more of a visual kind of thing, but the rest of the car looked pretty much like all the other ones. I think most non-nerds would probably have a hard time really noticing the difference. They'd see the front's a little bit different, maybe the rear a little bit, but this is what kind of stood out to me. So is that a deal breaker? I don't know, but it does definitely tell you that you got a little bit of a lower line vehicle than you would have with one of the other ones. And if you compare to the new Model 3 Standard, that's where it's really starkly different, because the Model 3 Standard has the full plastic tub, just like the rest of them in the front, but the Model Y Standard does not.
Joe, how was the cloth? Because I think the vegan leather is one of my favorite features, but I'm just curious how rough or not was the cloth when you were in it.
It seemed pretty comfortable to me. It's got inserts, so some of it's the vegan leather or whatever, the vinyl on the outsides, and then you have the fabric on the inside. It is actually slightly different in the look than what you see on the door panels or on the dashboard, which is kind of interesting. It's more of a weave rather than kind of a suede kind of look, I guess. I don't know how to explain that. But I mean, it held you well. You didn't slide around, like you might with the vinyl type seats. They seem like they would be pretty easy to clean. I even mentioned that when I was just talking about it. I'm like, if you had kids, car seat, stuff all over the place, I think it'd be pretty easy to clean up. and I think it would wear pretty well. So I didn't think it was horrible. It was, you know, it's definitely not high line like you would see with the rest of them, but I thought it was more than acceptable.
Brian, I know you keep asking like what's missing here, like I don't think it's about what they took out. I think it's the fact that, okay, you took all these things out and I only get a $70 reprieve. Like,
well, yeah, I would say there's a couple things on that, and it is a good point. But first of all, you were talking about maybe advertising or educating or whatever you want to call it. With not only this car, but any of the cars, I think that like they did last quarter where they said, hey, the 7500's ending, act soon. I think that they need to talk about if you finance it, you can deduct the interest on your taxes. If you're at the U.S., for example, you
I didn't
can
even know
also, well, you can, and that's actually in effect now. So that, depending on how much financing you have, it could be several $1,000s. So it helps with that
is
difference.
that income dependent or no?
It is. There are some income limits. I forget exactly what it is, but as long as you fit within that, and if they're trying to attract people on, with wanting lower cost and lower income, you would presume that they would fit into those limits. But anyway, they could educate on that. They could educate that some states still have rebates. That could be helpful as well, and not necessarily advertising or educating, but something else. And I'm kind of curious what you guys think is. One of the things that affected the building and the rollout of this vehicle had to do with the environment with tariffs and stuff. And the administration is saying that they specifically want to give relief to U.S. manufacturers, including Tesla, on tariffs. I'm wondering if it comes to fruition, if that's going to help Tesla be able to lower the cost a little bit as we get a couple of months into the rest of this year or into next year as well. So there are some other avenues. And the last thing I would say is currently you can either buy it by cash or finance. You can't lease it. And that's because they're still working out what is their strategy with the leases. And that is probably the best way for them to attract more people, by having monthly payment centric kind of approach.
Well, we do have a few things that can happen in coming months and years to reduce the price further. The tariff relief on some of those parts would be helpful, though Tesla famously sources as locally as they can for as much as they can. Battery prices are still falling. There's a LG plant that's going to be providing LFP cells to Tesla in Michigan. That could be another cost improvement. Even just importing them from China could be a cost improvement. We saw LFP Model 3s being made in the US until the sourcing requirements got strict enough that they no longer qualified for the incentive. So we could see some price reductions. And if it really doesn't sell, I suppose they could just compress the margin a bit. What do you guys think about that?
Nick's out. He's had it with this conversation.
Do we listen?
Maybe.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's all well and good, and I do think we'll see some pricing strategies. I mean, there was even conversation earlier or I guess late in Q2 about Tesla potentially having to raise the price of their vehicles because demand was so strong. They avoided that kind of temptation, but I think they're in this stage still where this came out with 1 week worth of data of what demand might look like in a post-tax credit kind of world. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if we see some different pricing strategies. And Joe, as you rightly pointed out, we've got some leasing opportunities to really broaden that TAM of people who are a little bit more monthly payment centric. So I'm not really too worried about this. I think a lot of the stuff that Nick was saying just in general about this isn't really what we were promised. I think that's all fair. I think some advertising would be beneficial to Tesla overall. I've been saying that for 4 years now. Whatever. To me, it's not that big of a deal, because where Tesla's value is really going to accrue is on the autonomy side and on robotaxi. So we're months away now, quarters away, let's call it, from Cybercab going into production, which let's just say it's a $30,000 ASP or cost of goods sold, however you want it. Probably cost of goods sold is the better way to look at it. Maybe it's even lower. So to me, it's like if we were to find something that would like really make everybody happy right now at like a $32,000 price point, why would we spend a whole lot of time ramping that up when we're 6 months away maybe from launching like the truly massive, like super high margin, where you're thinking of dollars on a per mile basis, and the platform fees that Tesla's going to have. Like, to me, that's the prize that you want to like focus on scaling, not some like, interim step of a, slightly or more significantly reworked car that will sell some more for, Q4 and maybe Q1 of 26. Like that's a local optimization. That's not a goal maximum optimization.
So I mean, if we're talking about what we can do to sell more, I guess another question is how much would investors appreciate them compressing the margin to increase units? And for that matter, does a vehicle without a rear screen make as much sense as a robotaxi? I'm sure you can still do it, but I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
Well, one thing I was just, I think it was Tesla Chan talked about that today, because people were saying, well, without the rear screen, it can't be a robotaxi. And I've had a few robotaxi rides, so I have some thoughts on that. First of all, robotaxi as the service can have whatever vehicles in it, and the Cybercab is going to be probably the majority of them, or at least that's what the intent is. So the lack of a rear screen is not a big issue. As far as being able to use them without a rear screen, the app is pretty good, and you can use that with the app. Also, now that they are allowing the safety monitor to be in the left seat, especially for highway like I was doing today, or ultimately when they get them out of the car completely, you still have a screen on the front that can be used for the robotaxi. So that's not really a problem if the app doesn't work. But really the longer term goal and what they are really working towards is that Grok integration for you just talk to it. So having a screen is probably going to be not an issue at all a year from now, is my opinion.
I would agree with you on that. And the voice integration, once it's voice, it doesn't matter, but it is already in your pocket, and we know you have your phone, because how else did you get in the car in the first place? Mm-hmm. Unless, of course, I guess your battery could die as soon as you get in the car, but that seems pretty unlikely, I suppose. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities here on this vehicle. Does any of you expect the price to go down within the next before the quarter ends on either of these two new models?
I don't think so, although they were pretty clear on the fact that they wanted to see how this was going. So it sounded like there was at least some room for maybe changing a little bit. But I think their biggest goal is to try to see what they can do on the leasing, because the leasing seems to be their real focus area right now.
Nick, any thoughts on potential for price drops?
I think they're going to have to. I imagine that I hope that, like I said, they didn't spend all this time to just come out at this price. But it makes sense. You don't start off with your lowest possible price. That would be insanity. No one does that in the real world. And Tesla's part of the real world. So I imagine they're trying to do some market pricing discovery, which is what they should do. It obviously has to be lower than the other ones, but I think they'll figure it out there. And I do think they will be willing to sell these at cost if it means getting more volume, which would, in my opinion, be the right move. You want to get maximum efficiency out of your lines. Before someone attacked my ISP and I went dead here for a second, I was going to say, we were talking about, what they can do, advertising or whatever. They literally don't do any. I mean, I've seen more advertising for people to vote for the shareholder meeting than I've seen for Teslas. If I live in the Tampa Bay area. If I go to any of the showrooms here, they don't even have FSD or commercials or anything on the walls. It's just old posters. It's all it is. You go in there and you talk to the salespeople, and they sit there and they tell you, yeah, we have to at minimum give 5 minutes of FSD, and they say like it's a drag on them. I go in periodically to all of these just to kind of get a beat, because I've found, and I'm not saying it's all of them, but I've found in general that the people at these showrooms aren't that great. They're not that knowledgeable. So at the bare minimum, Tesla could focus on training their people so that they know more than the YouTubers. Like, I don't think it's that much information. You don't have that many vehicles. You don't have that big of a product lineup to become masters at the topic. My best friend just bought a Cybertruck before the credit ended, and the rep was telling him that the front seats don't have the cooling and ventilation. He was wrong. He called me. He's like, Nick, am I crazy? I'm like, no, the guy's just wrong. Like, yes, they do. Go look at it. There's 2 trims. That's it. Says very clearly. You can compare them side by side. It's right there. Don't know how someone works there and doesn't know this, but I think there could be a big proper media blitz. Especially for FSD. Again, I kind of toned it down a little bit over the last month about FSD and push a narrative on this. I think it needs to get ramped back up. Tesla needs to push for FSD. The majority of the people who would benefit from it are people who are older. And people who are older, they watch mainstream media, they watch mainstream TV. That is where you're going to get them, but they don't know about it. I think that if Tesla would just literally put in somewhat of a decent effort to do the thing they don't want to do, if they're cool enough now to partner with Disney for Optimus after Elon's famous "Go F yourself," I think they can at least do some normal commercials. So I think that they can at least get to that point. But
I agree with you to the sense that I don't want to see just regular it's the person standing on the sand looking into the distance dreaming of their car type stuff. What I think has a lot of value, and I agree with you, Nick, but it has to do with showing how this technology can affect their lives in a positive way and understanding the technology. Because when I was at the delivery event at Giga Texas last week, they had a lot of people picking up cars, and many of them were first-time owners. And a lot of them didn't really know much about the tech or how it was going to work. They just wanted to get a Tesla. They knew that the end of the quarter was coming and all that. So there was a great opportunity to try to educate that and kind of just give them in their mind how this technology can affect their lives in a positive way.
In my opinion, the barometer should be your advertisement is so vast, so in people's face, and so knowledgeable that once people go in, they already know how to use the product. Most people go into a showroom, they don't even know how to use the Tesla. You should go in there knowing how to use it just because you've seen so much of it. It used to be the thing with the iPhone. I say I can hand this to anyone and they know how to use it the second I hand it to them. It should be at that level.
Not my sisters. Did I say that?
Someone clip this out, post it all over. We'll put it on mainstream TV as well.
Yeah.
What I would say is I love the idea, Nick, that if you can't convince them to run a traditional ad, convince them to update the in-studio experience so that, that is the perfect ad space.
Yes.
If you're looking at the car, when I'm there for any reason, I will invariably look at the TV screen to see what it's showing. And Tesla has bright people who could put together something compelling, showing FSD, showing how it looks, how it works, get them interested in that. And then, of course, make that available on YouTube as well. So those of us who need B-roll could, pinch it and show it as well. Well, it's true. That's the beauty is for a long time, channels would just use the same B-roll over and over endlessly. And I think we've moved past that because all of us have shot enough of our own footage that we have it. But I'm looking at this thinking a lot of people thought this was tremendously disappointing. I don't see it that way. I like what Nick said about start high. You can always go down if you need to. I know there were people who were saying, boy, if it was 30,000, I'm like 30,000, I think is would put them negative on the vehicle. I don't think they want to go negative. I don't think they need to go negative. And I don't see a whole lot more you can cut other than perhaps a bit of range would potentially bring the price down. We know they got rid of the passenger lumbar because no one was using it. I'm just glad they kept the rear seats in because typically people don't use those very much either. There is a limit to how much you can effectively cut. Is there anything else you guys see that they could have cut that would have brought the price down a bit? Well,
I don't know. I know with the Model Y, I mean, if, like I said, if you look at it, it's to me, it seems like they had more time working on that specifically to try to cut things out because there's a lot more effort that's involved than what you see with the Model 3. So, you know, if there was a place to take out some cost, there may be more in the Model 3 than the Model Y.
What's impressive is they reduced the weight by 123 pounds. I'm not sure where all of that went. I guess the wheels are probably heavier, but the single pane, the single glass instead of the laminated glass is a big weight reduction, surely.
Yeah, there's like a couple of it. I don't know. I think they removed parts, some inverters on the rear motor. They removed actually physical batteries from the same pack, so that reduced the size of the usable battery, but it also reduced a lot of weight. So I think those two are probably the big things. And they removed a lot of motors, the motors that you would use for like the steering wheel, to fold the mirrors, those kinds of things. So I think incrementally, if you add those up, and plus what you see in the frunk area of what was removed, I can see probably a good 80 pounds, 90 pounds just by that alone. So that gives you a pretty good, start on what their ultimate weight loss is on this model.
Nick, did you have any ideas on what else they could have cut to reduce the cost?
Not cut, but they could have done some math magic where, for example, my same best friend, one of the reasons he bought the Cybertruck now was, one, he's about to get married, so he was able to buy it under his wife's name and be able to get or his fiance's name to get the $7,500 credit. But they also said if you buy FSD with it, you get 0% interest, or if you don't buy FSD, it's 2.5%. And he did the math. He's like, oh, well, this is a no-brainer. Buy FSD with it. And so to me, you could do some interesting things right now with it, where you could say, hey, it's $39,000. If you buy FSD, it's $35,000, but then you buy the and that you kind of goose up your own margins there. And it's, I just think there's a lot of creative things they can do there. Or look, FSD is free. And I think I came back on when Matt was kind of saying, like, there's no point of doing a whole new line, a whole new platform, just when we're on this precipice of maybe not selling vehicles, or, moving towards a world where we sell less and less vehicles. It's like, okay, well then maybe you just, drop the price completely. FSD is $8,000. All right, it's $31,000 if you buy FSD with it. If you don't, it's $39,000. FSD is free for them. It's software. It doesn't cost them anything right now.
Yeah, and they're just
flashing computers. That's it.
Well, and all the equipment's already there. We can't get rid of the hardware because that's where your accident avoidance, your lane keeping, your automatic braking, your safety is, your cross traffic alerts, all that. Joe, that backup camera looked different. Was that because it was a pre-production model, or is that what they're actually going with?
I don't know. That is something that also stood out to me. When I was driving and I put it into reverse, and the rear view looked like I was looking out of a portal. And I actually mentioned that. I said, "What is up with that? Is that a new bezel on it or whatever?" And at least the people that I was with at that time didn't answer. And by the time I got back from driving and stuff, I forgot to go back and physically take a look at it. Now, I do have some photos of the back of the car, so I don't know if any of those actually show that. But I hope that was just something that was abnormal, because it really looked strange. Like I said, it looked like a circle kind of vignetted around the screen that you could see it through the rear. But it's kind of hard to see. I mean, I wasn't specifically trying to get close-up shots of that, but yeah. So I don't know, but I hope that was just the particular car I was in. Maybe there was a trim piece or preparation piece that hadn't been removed, but yeah, it was definitely different.
You had a chance to look inside the factory as well. Did you see anything interesting in regards to the new Model Y there that would be informative?
Well, I would say in general, and I noticed this when I was at Fremont as well, since they had the Model Y lines had been prepared earlier this year to get the refreshed Model Y. One of the things that they put a lot of effort to in both factories, and I would presume it's in the other factories as well, is with the older Model Y in the body in white section, when they put the hatch together and then they put it onto the car, it involved a lot of people. Now it's fully automated. And I think that that is a strategy of not only making it more efficient, reducing people, reducing errors and all that, but it gives it a really good a better capability of handling different parts pretty quickly. So it was like I said, fully automated, and it was able to kind of like in this case here we have two completely different hatches. We have the hatch for the premium and above, which is a different material. I think it's aluminum, and it's two-piece, and it's got a different window, and it's very different versus the one that's on the standard, which is kind of a blend between the old original Model Y, especially with the glass, and the new one. And having the full automation on that part of the factory really seemed to, it stood out to me when I saw the lines. The other thing I would say, and it kind of goes more to Matt, you were talking about the capacity that they have, at least at Giga Texas, is they're running 4 shifts a week for production for general assembly. That's Monday through Thursday. Every once in a while, they'll expand that, but that's the general one right now. And it's about 10 productive hours of the 12 hours of each day. So if they're running 1 per minute, we're talking about 10,000 vehicles per week. Per month. So about, 30,000 per quarter or 120,000 per year. And the factory is capable of doing more than twice that. So there is a lot of capacity that could be used, and they could add shifts to be able to produce more if they needed to. There was certainly enough room for that, and the setup was ready for that as well. As far as the staff that you would need, I presume you'd have to have a hiring spree, because the automation that I've noticed throughout the lines as they continue to add that. If you look out at the parking lots and you look at the head count, it is nowhere near as what they originally thought was going to be the case a couple of years ago.
Matt, in terms of investor sentiment, what do you think what should people be feeling this week with this news?
Yeah, I don't think this is massive news either way. I mean, we all knew that this was coming. The question was, okay, how low is the price going to go, and how significant will the redesign be? Will we actually get a new vehicle, or is it just going to be the what used to be called the Made in Mexico Model Y? And so it sounds like we got the latter, but built in Texas. But I think if you actually do the math of saying, okay, well, like what if they had come up with let's say a more price attractive, a more TAM increasing kind of vehicle, and what would that do to volumes and margins and earnings per share? It wouldn't really change the story too much in terms of like the overall share price and the earnings contribution had they come out with a cheaper thing. So I think, as Joe was talking about earlier, all the investments going into the Giga Texas factory are AI related. And so I think investors need to keep their eye on the prize of FSD, of Robotaxi and Cybercab, and of Optimus. Because there's going to be all sorts of puts and takes, and there's going to be quarters that are slightly better or slightly worse based on the actual vehicle sales. But I think our job as investors is to be a bit more forward looking and say, all right, how good is the technology? So as interesting as the newer, cheaper models are, I'm honestly way more interested in V14 coming out this week and kind of tracking that progress, because I think that's much more indicative of the value and how investors might be able to see returns in the future than the new lower cost models.
Yeah, I've been following, all the aggregators, all the sites, looking at all the comments, and the comments surrounding V14 are a lot more upbeat and positive, and the overwhelming majority of comments regarding the YS are negative, cynical, disappointed at best. Only a handful of people seem to. I made a video on Saturday where I tried to guess what was going to happen, and I came in pretty darn close. The only thing I missed was the glass roof. I didn't catch all of the things that were going to be cut. And I got the price to the penny, because I've been doing this a little while and I have a pretty good idea. I also got the Cybertruck to the penny on the day it was released, but I'm telling Tesla, hey, I can figure out a lot of stuff from peering over the fence. You should bring me so I can sign an NDA and then I can't talk. But we'll see about that in the future. You never know. A reminder that in about 5 minutes we wrap up this show. There will be an after show if you're watching on Futuraza or Brighter. It should automatically redirect to Futuraza, where I have the after show where I address the questions. Joe, if you'd like to join for that, I have sent you a link via DM on X in the next 5 minutes. I would say, if you get a chance, please subscribe to everyone here. Joe Techmeyer has got his own channel where he covers drone footage all the time. Matt from Rebellionaire has a great channel they do with Bradford Ferguson and a whole bunch of rotating guests. And of course, Nick Gibbs, again, investing against the grain. And he's got a whole lot of coverage on a whole lot of investment topics that is enough to make your brain sweat. So be careful with your brains, everybody. What are we looking for in the future? Are we looking for a different model? I saw a lot of people saying, well, what I really wanted was, and then they describe a completely different car, whether it's a minivan or a compact or something that's genuinely different. With autonomy coming, should we expect any more human-driven models apart from the Roadster?
Well, here's just my thought real quick. This week, a lot of big news, but the biggest news was V14, not the lower cost models. And I think that is indicative of where they're going. And they've been putting a lot of capital expenditures into cybercabs and that direction. So I would think that that's where we need to look into the future as far as coming up with something completely new, a Model 2 hatchback, 2-door type. I don't think that's in the cards.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. If the Cybercab is coming, I don't know why you would do any sort of, like 2-seater. I do think they're going to have more form factors like the RoboVan, but I think that ultimately is optimized for, doing mass transit in a different type of way. So I think we will see new vehicles over time, but that is really just to meet certain use cases. And I think the goal, Elon has this magic ability of finding what is the most important metric, for space travel, is the dollars per kilogram to orbit. I think in the autonomy world, it's driving down the cost per mile. And so one way you can really do that in the city is by increasing the number of passengers in a large form factor vehicle like a RoboVan. And then you can really get to the 10 cent per mile kind of really crazy low range by having a bus route kind of thing. So I think we're going to have innovations around that, all driven to kind of lowering that cost per mile while still delivering a great customer experience. But I wouldn't be expecting a full-size SUV or anything like that necessarily coming down the road.
Nick?
Yeah, I agree with everyone's saying, especially Matt, what you were saying about, we're investors, need to look into the future. I think this, to me, was just signal that, like I said, Elon nixed Franz. We can do 2 vehicles on the same line with the Cybercab. Clearly, they nixed that. This is not that. This is them trying to limp their way into what the future is. And it also tells me that these might be the last vehicles that we ever see that are human driven. And at some point, someone's got to draw that line in the sand. Steve Jobs is the one that did away with the floppy drive. Steve Jobs did away with CD. I mean, he did a lot of things where he's like, you have to take a bold stance. And I think this is kind of giving a nod towards that direction. And it's scary and exciting all at the same time. But like everyone's saying here, when you see, just go watch Dirty Tesla going through the drive-through. Like that, it's, a lot of times you see these and you're like, it's hard to tell because especially in the middle of the drives, like it looks a little smoother. Did that a little, but it's so good now that it's really hard to discern. But with this version, the drive-through, it can't do that. It can navigate through a drive-through right now. What I have, it can navigate through a drive-through and not hit anything, but it stopped. It let him order. It went up. He didn't roll the window up or anything. It waited for him to finish, and then you saw that, and that's where I think Elon's talking about it feels sentient. And I think this is just showing when you see that, just watch that one clip if you haven't seen it. You watch that one clip, And you just kind of sit there and be like, well, no wonder they said, nah, we're going full throttle, cybercab. Once again, Elon was right. We shouldn't have been trying to hedge. We should have just gone this, the whole way through. And it almost makes me wish that Walter Isaacson was still writing the biography so we could understand what happened behind the scenes, because it seems like there's so much drama, such a great story that happened behind the scenes that we don't know of. But to me, it seems abundantly clear, especially with what we're seeing. This is the first version of 14 coming out to us, and we know that it's always kind of rough and it looks so polished. The fact that Chuck Cook, and by the way, Joe, you said that you were a former Air Force, former Navy here, but the fact that Chuck Cook,
sorry about that,
is it's all right. We won't make fun of the Chair Force. But the fact that Chuck Cook is saying send it out on the first, Chuck Cook never says that. The guy is extremely cautious and conservative with it, which makes sense given what he does. But he never just says send it, and he's saying send it. That's just signal. I always say listen to people who are right a lot, and I think that stands. With everything we're seeing right now. So while I think this was a miss in many ways, especially because Tesla hyped it up, right? They literally hyped it up. Like they did not do themselves any favor here. They could have just quietly slipped it in and that's it. Or they could have a long time ago said, hey, it's just going to be, and to be frank, Elon did say, hey, cat's out of the bag. It's just a lower cost Model Y. He did say that on the call. But I think the future is what we need to focus on, to everyone's point.
Well, I would say that version 11 took me to the drive-thru at Panda Express. I wasn't going to Panda Express. I was going to the supermarket, and that's where it took me. And I thought, well, I should probably disengage. But what a marketing opportunity, get a revenue stream there. Just start taking people to restaurants. I don't know. Guys, thanks for hanging out. Huge thanks to the special guest this week. This has been a lot of fun. And hopefully you'll be redirected. If not, head over to Futuraza, where I will be joining you right now for the live after show.
Cheers, everybody.